With most of the world now very concerned about vehicle emissions, why are Chelsea tractors proving to be so popular? If you're not familiar with the term, this is the massive big SUVs, the Range Rovers, the BMW X7s, the Audi Q8s. These are monstrous cars weighing in about 2.5 tons, which is a good ton heavier than most EVs on the road today. And they are a blight on society, on motoring, because they're heavy. They are going to destroy some of the car parks and multi-storey car parks because their loading is so high, way above anything that was foreseen when they were built. They're parking in marked bays. They overhang the bays. Number of times I've seen a space in a car park and thought I can get in there, and then you find out no, I can't, because the Chelsea tractor is overhanging the bay. Also, look at the petrol consumption. We are trying to reduce emissions, which is better for the planet and better for our health, and yet the typical petrol consumption of one of these Chelsea tractors is hovering around 20 miles to the gallon. Now, the UK average for all diesel cars and petrol cars, petrol is 38 miles per gallon, diesel is 43. So these are a mile apart from where we should be heading. Should these vehicles actually be banned? I'm Dave. This is Dave Takes It On. Why does it matter? What if I personally am against them? Is there any problem? Well, when we look at what Europe is trying to achieve, and the UK as well, is to reduce emissions. Around the world, people are looking to try and reduce emissions, heading towards net zero in 2050. And to produce and sell cars that are massively inefficient, doing 20 miles to the gallon, which is less than half of the UK average, when there are new cars coming on the market now which are achieving 50, 55, even 60 miles per gallon. Are these heading in totally the wrong direction? Are they hampering a country's ambition or target to get down to zero emissions in 2050? Because if they are, we've got one part of the motor industry striving like mad to get their emissions down, to get the EV numbers up, to help these targets, and another part of the auto industry saying, hey, let's just build the biggest and fastest and heaviest that we can and blow the efficiency, blow the emissions. Let's just go for cars that people will sit and enjoy. It's an interesting question. Have Chelsea tractors become immoral? In 2024, the sales figures are looking really interesting. We're talking Chelsea tractors. Let's take the Range Rover, for example. The number of Range Rovers sold brand new, and these, by the way, are the best part of £100,000 on the road in the UK, outsold the best-selling EV, which was the Tesla Model Y, at £50,000. That seems a bit skewed to me. It's possible we're actually heading in the wrong direction. Why are these big, inefficient and emission-producing cars outselling EVs? And at a time when the EVs are becoming much more efficient, and they're achieving that by making the weight of the EV even less, batteries are getting lighter, chassis are getting lighter, particularly the Model 3 with the one-piece cast aluminium chassis member, then why are people buying ones that are getting heavier and heavier? Some of these Chelsea tractors are up over 3,000 kilograms, which is heading towards twice the weight of a standard EV. So it seems we're heading in the wrong direction. It seems that our, what would we call it? Not pride, status maybe? I don't even know how best to describe it. But what is it about these great big vehicles that cost twice as much as most cars and use twice as much fuel as most cars? What is the attraction? And some people say, well, it's safety. If I'm in my big truck and we have a crash, I'm very safe. The actual reality is the opposite, and that is the most safe car in the whole world in the NCAP testing. This is Euro NCAP, a compulsory test. The best car in the world is the Tesla Model S. The second is the Tesla Model 3, and the third is the Tesla Model Y. They are miles ahead of everyone else. And although some of these Chelsea tractors do get 5-star ratings, each of the categories are at a significantly lower level, and they do lack an awful lot of the driver assist safety features that are common now in all EVs, even right down at the budget end, but are just starting to appear in some of these ultra large Chelsea tractors. It seems ironic that at a time when UK and European governments are trying to reduce the emissions of cars, the manufacturers are actually increasing the size of existing ICE cars, the petrol and the diesel cars, like the BMWs, the Audis, and the Range Rovers. So there's a question that's going to be coming up shortly, which is, should the regulators be stepping in now and saying, you can have your big cars, but let's get them down to a reasonable emission level, or get them up to a reasonable miles per gallon figure. You see, if you're averaging 18 or 20 mile per gallon, you're using 2 or 3 times as much fuel as some of the modern, slightly smaller cars, but still decent size. I recently had rented a Mercedes C-Class, and that's a superb car. It was a saloon car, but it was claiming to get about 50 or 60 miles to the gallon. So in terms of prestige, that was a lovely car. In terms of efficiency, that was a very efficient car. And you contrast that with something like a Range Rover, which costs twice as much, probably twice as heavy, uses twice as much fuel. And you start thinking, maybe the regulators are looking in the wrong place. Maybe they should be looking at some of these really, really inefficient cars. And that includes, unfortunately for some people, the supercars as well, the Ferraris, the Lamborghinis. Now, it is an interesting fact, in 2024, over in the States, they have 2 models of the Mustang, classic car, Bullet Steve McQueen, classic car chase. But over there in 2024, the Mach-E, the all-electric version, outsold the petrol version of the Mustang by more than 7,000 vehicles. The mood is changing. Now, the Mach-E is actually faster in many ways than the Mustang, the petrol version. And certainly as you go up the model range, the petrol one gets faster and faster with bigger and bigger V8 triple turbo engines. But the top of the range Mach-E also has a top of the range performance version, and that is faster than any of those. So if you're looking for performance, you can get that in a non-emission car. If you're looking for status, that car has a status symbol. Why are we so fixated on these big Chelsea tractors? If you are an owner of one of these, I'm not having a go at you, but I really am interested in why you have one. It could be, for example, you don't believe in climate change, you don't believe in net zero, you don't believe in emissions, it's all a government plot, and you are fighting back in the best way you know possible, and that's to buy the most inefficient and least fuel efficient car that you can find in the world today. Is there another reason you're buying them? Just an interesting statistic. A lot of people say it's space. And a very quick look at just 2 models which are directly opposite each other, which would be something like a Range Rover and a Tesla Model S. Tesla Model S, really sleek, low saloon. Range Rover, big, beefy SUV, 4-wheel drive and everything else. And we're just comparing boot spaces. It might fascinate you to know, fascinated me, that they have almost the same boot space, 700 and something litres with all the seats up. That's the Range Rover and the Model S. And when you fold all the seats down, that virtually, well, just more than doubles. It's about 1,700 litres for both cars. In other words, the argument that you like a nice big car doesn't really hold a lot of water, because you can get exactly the same boot space. Now, there may be differences in headroom and other things as well, but that's just an interesting factor. So what is your reason for it? Do you think they should be banned? Do you think everyone should have one? What are your thoughts on this? Because I'm really quite baffled that at a time when the whole world seems to be talking about reducing emissions, reducing pollution and everything, that the manufacturers are just making bigger and bigger and bigger and heavier, less efficient cars. 18 miles per gallon to me today, it's bordering on criminal, surely. And I think maybe the regulators will also be looking into this. There was an attempt about 10 years ago in Europe to set a minimum standard of 30 mile per gallon of any car ever. So you can build what you want. You can build your big Chelsea tractors. It doesn't matter. You can put as big engine as you want in, but you just set a minimum miles per gallon. And 30 today, you would think it would be a perfectly achievable figure. I just look back 20, 30, 40 years and think, well, if cars had followed a similar trajectory to home computers and processing power, then today we'd have petrol cars doing 2,000 miles per gallon and costing just a couple of £100 in the showrooms. It's gone exactly the opposite way. The efficiency now of these cars, the miles per gallon, is vastly less than it was 50 years ago. And the price has just gone up to an astronomical £100,000 for even the most basic of the variants. Going in the wrong direction. But other companies are also going in the opposite direction. They're going much smaller, much lighter cars, particularly EVs, where weight is inefficiency. So these cars are getting very much lighter. Yeah, it's a strange one. So if you drive either an EV or a Chelsea tractor, just let me know in the comments below what you think. Am I talking rubbish? Should we encourage them? Should we ban them? Where do you stand? Please like, please subscribe. I'm Dave. If you'd like to help the channel further, then consider becoming a Patreon member. For about the cost of a cup of coffee every month, you get loads of goodies like outtakes, as if I get things wrong, but also a live chat where you can ask me questions and you will get personal answers. And also we do notify in advance where we're likely to be filming on occasions when we have spare time. So you're perfectly free to join us. And there you can actually buy me a cup of coffee, probably a donut or two. I'm Dave.